Welcome, everybody. I'm going to introduce, even though some of you were here yesterday, I'll introduce John. But before, I would like to say a few words about Rangjung Yeshe Institute. Some of you might know us, some of you not. So we're an institute who are bringing traditional teachings, Tibetan traditional teachings, along with inquiry, academic inquiry. So contemporary questions and ways of formulating Buddhist thought. We have a wide range of courses, language courses, philosophy courses, and right now our registration are open for next semester. So if you're interested, please consult our website. This is particular, and I want to kind of do a pitch in for our institution because this is really an incredible place to come and study. And the fact that John is with us, a wonderful scholar that has influenced the whole field, along with Bill Waldron and many others who came to teach us here, having access to this really quality teachings, both from the tradition and the academic side, is truly incredible and unusual. So if you're interested to taste it, there's always a week of free classes that you can check out for yourself. So back to our things for today. John Makransky has been an associate professor of Buddhism and comparative theology at Boston College. He's played many roles: senior academic advisor here at Rangjung Yeshe, president of Society of Buddhist Christian Studies, fellow of the Mind and Life Institute. He was also one of the leaders of a scholarly movement in the American Academy of Religion to establish a unit dedicated to Buddhist critical constructive reflection, which influences our classes here often. So we refer to John's work often. John has published many books, articles, and he focuses on connection between devotion, compassion, and wisdom in Indian and Tibetan Buddhism. And more to the point today is his development of sustainable compassion training model of contemplative practice to help modern Buddhists, people of diverse faith, and those in caring roles and professional generate a more and professionals. So please welcome with me, Professor John.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you all. Can you hear me okay? Please raise your hand if at any time you do not hear me clearly. I'm going to begin with a refuge bodhicitta prayer, okay? In the Buddha, the Dharma, and supreme spiritual community, I go for refuge until full enlightenment. By the power of bodhicitta and all six perfections, may I realize Buddhahood for the sake of all beings. So last episode, last evening, I went over quite a lot, and I really can't repeat all that here. I know a number of you are new this evening, so I'm just going to have to sort of move along and try to help you connect up with where we are. And I would ask you to actually watch the video if what I present this evening is meaningful to you, then you really should watch the video of last night, and that's already loaded and available to anyone who registered for this mini course. Okay? So my basic purpose in this kind of work of what I'm presenting here is to help practitioners. As Diane said, first of all, Buddhist practitioners. like modern Buddhist practitioners, like us, but also practitioners of other religions and faiths who want a very deep encounter with Buddhism that's more than just intellectual, that really affects them and illumines their own deep spiritualities. And also people in all kinds of caring roles and professions who are really seeking a much more stable power of compassion and love and wisdom for their lives and their work. So my basic purpose, to phrase it a certain way, is to help practitioners in all these categories, and certainly perhaps primarily Buddhists first, become as receptive as we can to the spontaneous power of awakening. And one key to that, I believe, is trust and receptivity. If we could somehow trust our reality enough to relax all of our filters upon it, we would realize we are already held in absolute, unconditional, and unchanging love, compassion, and wisdom from the ground of our being right now. Beyond all of our own agendas and frameworks of ego, held in the unchanging love, compassion, and wisdom of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas from without, as it were, as if from out there, held by the unchanging compassion, love, and wisdom of our Buddha nature from within, as it were, and ultimately held by the non-dual ground of awakened qualities beyond out or in. So that's actually what I'm introducing here. Now, referring back to what I introduced last night for our meditation, I said the entry point for all practice in the whole history of Buddhism has been relational, and it's been the recognition that we are held in those awakening qualities by all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, by all who have awakened before us, long before it ever occurred to us that that was happening. And that's part of the meaning of going for refuge in the Buddha and the realized Sangha. When we think of the Buddha and his qualities, those qualities are not just out there, over there, inside of him. Those qualities are all pervasive compassion and wisdom pervading us. Is that clear? I don't think a lot of Buddhist studies scholars get that. They read it, but I don't hear them say that. We're engulfed in the powers of those awakened qualities. That's part of the meaning of refuge. So to help people from many kinds of different background, first Buddhists, but also those in the other kinds of categories who may take an interest in this kind of learning, contemplative learning, I introduced a kind of meditation that I call field of care meditation. It's like a field of refuge. And I gave us 3 options so that people from different backgrounds and with different internal makeups, it's not just Buddhist or non-Buddhist, therefore you use this field of care option and non-Buddhists use that one. It actually doesn't work that way. It may be a long practicing Buddhist for 20, 30, 40 years, trying to connect to the power of awakening in the objects of refuge before them, who haven't been able to connect very well. And so I give another option. One option is think of a simple, caring moment, a moment that makes you happy to recall, a moment that feels inspiring or uplifting to remember it, a moment when perhaps you felt seen or somebody was genuinely happy to be with you. And you recall that? It makes you happy to recall it. Can we all think of one moment like that? We're not looking for a perfect person. We're looking for a moment. Could also be with an animal. Can everybody find one? If not, that's your assignment. Find one. And then tomorrow, bring it here. You have thousands of them, thousands. But we may not have been taught to notice them. Simple moments of loving connection, and a moment that makes you happy to recall is the sign. And now you re-inhabit that moment as happening now. It's not in the past, it's now. And you are held in that way right now. And start to feel the qualities that automatically come with that. Is that clear? The second option is to now to think of a person, not just one moment, but a person, I'm calling a benefactor, who you're actually deeply grateful has been part of your life or your world. You found somehow to think of him or her is to feel really inspired, blessed, uplifted, moved. Just to think of him or her. Can you think of someone like that in your life or in your world? That would be a benefactor. And that's another option for field of care. The first is bring to mind a caring moment and re-inhabit it. Second option is bring to mind a benefactor in that sense and be with that person, that being. The third option is for any of us who practice within a spiritual tradition and find very uplifting and inspiring and profoundly connecting a traditional practice of bringing to mind traditional fields of care or fields of refuge, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, lineage gurus, the Buddha, Tara, Chenrezig, Zig, and so forth, or the communion of saints, or the prophets, or your favorite prophet. When I grew up as a little Jewish boy, my favorite prophet was Joseph. That's eventually when I became a Buddhist, I realized he was a major benefactor for me, just to think of that figure from the Bible. But here we're in a Buddhist setting. Many of us may be practicing traditional forms of refuge, of a gundra. All of them involve bringing to mind a field of refuge, a field of care, receiving their blessings, being offered up to them, purified by them, merging with them. You following? That's a field of care that I call a spiritual field. And that's the third option. Okay? Now, during this field of care meditation that we did last evening, I asked, people to share just one quality, just name one quality that you experienced while we were doing that meditation, when you re-inhabited a caring moment, when you were with a benefactor, communing, resonating, feeling blessed and inspired by that, when you were inhabiting your spiritual field that I just described. Name one quality of that experience. And we got a whole list of qualities: love, ease of being, warmth, deep comfort, coming home, felt blessed, inspired, and on and on. But then also some one or two people shared, but along with that, some fear came up inhabiting this field of care. Someone else said, doubts started to come up in my mind about all this. And that's what I want to explore tonight, okay? So those of you who practiced with me last night or who have practiced this practice before, perhaps you've viewed it when I've taught it online or something, or video. at those last night. Try to name a difficulty that arose, a reaction that came up while you were inhabiting your field of care in that practice that took your attention away from the feeling of the loving qualities that came with the practice. So we named many loving qualities. Try to name one difficulty that you experienced with the meditation last night. Can you remember? Just try. Try to remember. It wasn't just a smooth ride, was it? Typically, it's not. And it's important to become conscious of how it's not. Yeah. So resistance, good. And actually, it does need to be brief because I have to repeat it for the microphone. So just concisely. Yeah. Drama. Painful memories. Great. Others? Yes. Sorry? Getting distracted. The mind said, time to think about other things. Right. Yeah. A lack of trust. Great. Good. Thank you. What else? Can you remember? Yeah. Become so becoming aware of what seems like many times that I was not experiencing care compared to just a few times that I was. Good. Yep. Grief, pain, and trauma. Okay. Yep. I don't deserve this, being held in this kind of absolute care, acceptance. Good. Excellent. Yep. Shame. Wonderful. Thank you. It's one of my favorites. Yeah. Any others? That's a great list. Yeah. Sorry. Neediness. Good. Okay. So let me say some things about this. Typically, when we enter into this practice where we're inhabiting a field of pretty profound care, warmth, acceptance, love, things like that, you don't even have to talk about it. You just re-inhabit a kind of context of care that you already know. And that's part of the power of this direction of practice. I'm not assigning you what it is that'll bring you a felt sense of being held or seen or warmth or deeply accepted or ease of being or many other things, or tenderness. I'm not assigning you what to think of, but that is your assignment. In fact, I would argue there are thousands of moments like that, thousands, that we have not been taught to notice them. This is a whole other kind of mindfulness practice. Little moments, not just big deal moments. Oh, my uncle was not loving enough most of the time. He was so gruff. My father mistreated me, my blah, 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 blah. There are probably moments of love with your father, completely gone from your mind, or maybe not. But then maybe moments of love with your mother, even though she was so difficult for you, completely gone from your mind, forgotten or not noticed, or maybe not. But then what about the social worker who came? What about the kindly police officer? What about the kindly camp counselor? What about moments of kindness from this or that teacher? What about the stranger who smiled upon you? What about someone who helped you up when you tripped? What about thousands and thousands and thousands of moments like that? Most of us have not been taught to notice them because we didn't realize how crucial they were for our development, for our awakening. In any case, though, when we enter into this practice of re-inhabiting a moment of care, genuine care that makes you happy to recall, or with a benefactor or inhabiting your spiritual field where you're held in absolute unconditional love and compassion and wisdom by the saints or by the bodhisattvas. When we inhabit that, it seems like everything should be smooth sailing. We automatically start to experience loving or awakening qualities like those we named last night. But why is it not smooth sailing? Why typically do reactions come up in our mind that tend to shut it down or draw us away or compare? So this field of care, deeply receptive mode of practice cultivates deepening receptivity to qualities of awakening, which we have already experienced but haven't known how to open further to. Qualities of awakening that were triggered or evoked when with others who for a moment were embodying some of those qualities. And it triggered that capacity in us that came out. That's why I say it's so crucial. This deeply receptive mode of practice with the field of care is cultivating receptivity. And another word for receptivity is vulnerability. Vulnerability to energies and qualities of love, compassion, and wisdom available in the ground of our experience, our Buddha nature. But there are parts of us that have been concerned to protect us from vulnerability, for fear we may be hurt. There are parts of our mind that are oriented to protect us from vulnerability like this, for fear that we may be hurt. So this practice often evokes parts of our minds, various senses of self and associated thoughts and reactions that will resist the meditation, and that is almost inevitable, and therefore it needs to be pointed out right now. I'll repeat that. This practice of deepening receptivity or vulnerability often evokes parts of our minds, and by parts of our minds, I mean something very simple. Various senses of self that arise in the mind and their associated thoughts and reactions, which resist the meditation for fear we may be hurt. For example, a fretful, anxious, or fearful part of the mind may arise, a sense of self that's afraid of opening to loving qualities. We heard about that last night from someone. Or a wounded part of the mind may arise that wants to think about how I have never really received enough love from others. Or a controlling part may arise. By the way, I'm familiar very much with all these parts. I'm not sitting here judging other people who have these parts of their minds. I'm familiar with all these. Very. Controlling part of the mind may arise that wants to take over the meditation by thinking about other things. A cynical sense of self may think of reasons not to trust any caring moment or any benefactor, or all this crap about spiritual figures. A self-critical part of the mind may think, I don't deserve love. A caretaking part of the mind may say, I should experience care only for others, never experience love myself. That's wrong. Or a sense of self may arise that wants to grieve the loss of a loving figure, which is fine and healthy. We need to grieve. But it can become unhealthy if it will not let that feeling of grief be embraced in the loving qualities of the meditation. Now, these parts of our minds are senses of self, and here I'm going to draw partly from parts of current psychology and partly from Abhidharma understandings of the mind. These parts of our minds or senses of self, and there are many of them. There is no one sense of self. There is no one self. there are thousands or millions of senses of self. The sense of self that I'm inhabiting at this moment is different from the one of 3 minutes ago when I was describing the parts and kind of inhabiting them. You follow? So these parts of our mind or senses of self often first emerged with these kinds of protective strategies, protecting us from becoming vulnerable in our childhood, when it seemed to us that loving qualities come only from others, from an external world that's not fully reliable. These senses of self think that we will get hurt if the loving qualities are not accessed from the external world in a safe enough way that they are in charge of. So these parts of our minds think that they are protecting us from being hurt by obstructing our receptivity to the loving qualities themselves, which are actually qualities, in this case, in this practice, of our own ground of awareness of our Buddha nature. These parts of our mind do not yet understand that. It's not what they're used to. For them, loving qualities come from outside of us. When other people treat us just the right way, these parts of our minds do not know that loving qualities can come from deeply within us, evoked by a field of care, but not given to us by a field of care. So other persons and beings who have been present to us in loving ways in our lives have evoked our loving capacities. So we experience loving qualities emerge from our awareness. But those others did not give us those loving qualities or inject them into us. No one took a big syringe and injected warmth, the feelings of warmth and acceptance and wonderfulness. No one injected that into your body or mind. When they were present to you, embodying some of these positive qualities, that part of their Buddha nature, it evoked that part of your Buddha nature and you experienced it. So the field of care meditation cultivates vulnerability to loving qualities from our Buddha nature, but protective parts of our minds may try to prevent that. So we don't become too vulnerable to the external world that they think is the source of the qualities. They don't know our Buddha nature is. So when we do the field of care meditation again this evening, we need to help these protective parts of our minds that arise during it sense that the loving qualities they're experiencing are actually coming from the depth of our awareness, the nature of mind, which is a reliable source of love, not from an external world that may not be reliable. That's a real key to deepening, a key to deepening trust in what can be trusted. So how to help these parts of our minds learn that? Let's get concrete, specific, and simple. Within this meditation, field of care meditation, there are three basic principles, which I call accessing, noticing, and including. First, we use the field of care meditation to access loving qualities. That's accessing. The field of care meditation helps us access or open to loving qualities. When you re-inhabit a caring moment that makes you genuinely happy to recall and you're really beginning to really re-inhabit it, it's not just a memory. Qualities are there immediately. Try that. And so also with a genuine benefactor, may make you slightly tear up to even think of him or her because they feel so blessed to you. Or your spiritual field, similarly. When you re-inhabit it and it's here now, and you are held in it, the qualities are here now. That's access. The second principle is noticing. So notice any sense of self and associated reactions that arise. Noticing, like the senses of self and the kinds of reactions I just described earlier. Notice any sense of self. Feels a little fear, a little skepticism, a little doubt, a little cynicism, a little time to think of other things. Notice that sense of self and its feeling and reaction. That's noticing. And then let any such sense of self just be naturally included in the spacious warmth and care and acceptance of the field of care. And that's including, accessing, noticing, including. Field of care evokes these loving qualities, that's accessing. Now notice as you begin to steep and relax into those qualities, which is the only simple instruction, just steep in them, relax into them, let them work on you, let them process you. Oops, here comes a sense of self and its reactions. Oh, time to think of other things. I've got to plan what I'm doing tomorrow. Now notice it. This is a mindfulness practice. Notice that sense of self and its current reaction. And then it's very simple. It's arisen, so just include it. Let it be embraced. Let it be held very naturally in the same field of warmth and acceptance and care. It's as if it invited itself into the party. So let it be here for the party. When we do that, when we include it, we're becoming a loving, healing environment for every reaction and feeling, no longer identified with them. By including it, we are now becoming a healing environment for it. We are not it. Do you follow? That's a huge difference. And that's what I'll instruct. So whatever senses of self, feelings, and reactions arise can feel accepted, welcomed, can start to relax, settle, heal, unwind, and in that way metabolize themselves. We don't have to do anything to them or about them. Nothing, nothing at all, no agenda for them, other than to let them include themselves in this spacious field of warmth and acceptance and deep allowing. And this is a way to help all parts of us sense that the source of the qualities that they're experiencing is the depth of our awareness. Buddha nature is reliable, is inexhaustible, and actually is not changing. So, shall I give it a try? So first, recall our three options for field of care meditation: caring moment, or benefactor, or spiritual field. And consider right now, which of those three options is best right now to help you sense that you are held in a field of love and deep acceptance and compassion. Choose one of them. Has everybody chosen one? It is the entry in. And once your field of care has evoked the loving qualities that it brings out, then shift your attention mainly to those qualities and energies, just steeping in them, accepting them into your whole being. I'm not leading the meditation yet, but sort of am, just telling you what to do in it. Let these loving qualities make you into a healing environment that can embrace all aspects of your experience, as if every part of you is loved in its very being. And then whatever thoughts and feelings and reactions arise in the meditation, notice them. like basic mindfulness. Notice it and let them just be naturally included in this loving environment of warmth and acceptance, compassion, to metabolize themselves in their own time, in their own ways. And they'll appreciate it. Okay, let's go into it a little more formally now. But it's fun that you all seem to go into it just from my describing it. So just relaxing, coming down from the thinking mind into the body. Let the breath settle into its own natural flow while breathing from the abdomen, so it expands with each breath. Natural flow of breath. And let the feeling of the abdomen expanding and contracting with each breath draw you into that feeling more and more with each breath. The feeling of the belly expanding and contracting. And now bring to mind your field of care, your caring moment or benefactor or spiritual field, and not just as a memory or abstract thought, but as really present here and now, happening here, now. So you are being seen and held in deep care, compassion, total acceptance, and warmth beyond any judgments, through and through, you and your whole world. And once you begin to experience those qualities, just relax into the experience, just steeping in its loving energies, steeping in its tender qualities, and letting them infuse your whole being and your whole world. Into your whole body, your whole mind, your whole world. Every part of you and your world, loved in its very being. Every part of your mind and your world, loved in its very being. And if part of your mind is having difficulty with this practice or starts to draw your attention away, notice that part of your mind, that sense of self and its reactions. in a gentle, welcoming way, deeply allowing it to be here. Let that part of you be naturally included, embraced in the warmth and acceptance of this healing environment. Let that part of your mind, that sense of self, be naturally included or embraced in the warmth and acceptance of this healing environment. Let it have all the space it needs to relax, find its own place, and metabolize itself in its own time, in its own way. Now let this loving, healing environment just help your mind to relax deeply and to trust enough to just release all of the mind's frameworks of meditation or concern. Let the mind just settle back a bit inwardly, and come to rest in the background of its awareness, which is naturally wide open and luminous like a sunlit sky. Let this ground of total openness and simple cognizance meditate you. Let this unity of total openness and lucidity meditate you. And as thoughts and reactions or feelings arise, let them just process themselves and release within this sky-like openness of awareness. by just letting everything be. Yeah, thank you.
Wow.
When I get back to the United States, I'll send everyone who registered for the course through Dan Denis a copy of the meditation handout for this mini course. And this meditation we just did is number 2 in the handout, sort of developing deepening receptivity. So more and more parts of us that come up are very gently and naturally welcomed right into this healing environment of the field that the field of care has evoked from us. So again, these 3 basic principles of this receptive mode of field of care practice are: first, with the help of a field of care, accessing the loving energies and qualities from the depth of our awareness. Secondly, noticing parts of the mind that arise, parts of the mind that are kind of maybe in reaction. And then thirdly, immediately after noticing, then let those parts of the mind be just naturally, gently included, or let them include themselves. They've arisen, so maybe they want to be here. Maybe they want to experience these qualities rather than sucking our mind into total identification with them and endless reaction from them, which has been suffering for these parts of our minds our whole life. Maybe they would really appreciate a rest, these parts of our minds. Maybe they would really appreciate it if we gave them a break and stop putting them on like actors put on their masks, identifying fully with them and acting them out again and again and again, which is exhausting for them and for us. Are you kind of following what I'm saying? This is a radically different way to be, and yet it is so simple. So accessing, noticing, and including. And this process then makes us, kind of remakes us into a loving, healing environment for all parts of us. And from there, If that really begins to happen for someone from that place, almost automatically, we are now a much more loving, healing environment for others, automatically. Because our reactions to others that make us less than a loving, healing environment for them are reactions to parts of our own mind triggered by others. But if we no longer are afraid of the parts of our mind that are triggered by others, then we're no longer afraid of others. So this is profound, and it is relational. The qualities of this, that the field of care evokes in us, that we experience in this meditation, come from our Buddha nature, mixed with various tendencies of grasping and so forth. Of course, we're not enlightened yet, but we're in process. The basic substance of those qualities is Buddha nature qualities: love, warmth, acceptance. Someone who actually begins to experience a recognition of the nature of mind, it is said, from the nature of mind, experiences a fundamental warmth toward all reality. So it's profound. So these qualities from our Buddha nature, that's their source. And therefore, in the last step of the meditation, we let those qualities help us just relax back toward that source. Let this healing, loving environment and its qualities just help the mind to trust enough to just relax, release all of its frameworks of mind, the framework of the meditation itself, all frameworks of all concerns, all goals, all attempts to be or do anything. Just let that all fall away and settle back toward the deep source of these qualities. Let these qualities help you. And that was the last step of the meditation. That'll be in the meditation handout. Okay, good. So there's some time left. So, any questions from your experience of that meditation or the talk that came with it? Or any comments from your experience of the meditation or the talk with it? Yeah.
This is really about it. I'm getting confused when you say what is reoccurring in the meditation as like sense of selves or parts of selves in their very being, allowing them to be loved in their very being.
As if when I actually, it's a little tricky there. When I say every part of you in your world loved in its very being, I'm using the word part in a more general sense. Just everything loved in its very being.
It's the very being part that I'm confused about. Can you say it differently? Is there another way that you can explain that? Because in the meditation, then you try to identify that and it unties itself. Yeah. So
everything of you and your world loved in its very being. First, just see if you can let the words resonate without trying to figure them out, what they mean. As if you're being spoken to in your very being or in the depth of your being, not your head. A little more like in your heart. And secondly, the very being of all of us and all phenomena is luminous emptiness. So in the very nature, in our very being as such, it's love all the way down. That's what it's gesturing toward. But it's not something to think about a lot up here like that. It's more like an instruction below the level of usual language or discourse. That's all. I hope that helps a little. Okay, great. Great question. Other questions and also comments from your experience of the meditation or anything said about it? There surely are. So no need to be shy. This is like your only chance.
Do you have any comments for how we would take this into our daily lives?
Yeah. uh, I mean, when you have the meditation handout, because here I'm just instructing it, and I know it can be hard to retain it all, but I think actually it seems like for many of you, there's some kind of a resonance with it, such that something is already internalized from it. But what I suggest basically is for people who feel a strong connection to this mode of practice, and really this mode of practice is just straight adapted from fundamental patterns of Mahayana and Vajrayana practice. I took it right out of that. I took it right out of kind of whatever my limited experience is of practice in Mahayana Vajrayana traditions, of Ngundro, of Keirim Tsogrim, of the Avatamsaka Sutra, being drawn right into the sutra. So in a sense, this is a very traditional pattern, but I'm giving it a certain language, both to help Buddhists who may even be doing very traditional practices. Some of us, it might help us catch on more. Oh my gosh, this reaches down into every part of my life. And also, of course, to also help people of other religions who I feel very close to. I was really nurtured at Boston College. It's a Catholic university. I felt like I was held in a field of care and warmth there. They know I'm a Buddhist. I'm an alien. But I was held in warmth. And I learned a lot. And I love them back. Also, Jews. I grew up with them. God love them. Not to mention Hindus and Muslims I've known. So for them too, can resonate with them pretty deeply, right back into their own worldview. And then for people in all kind of caring roles. So what to do? In order for this to really affect us over time, we would have to practice one of these meditations first thing in the morning when we get up, just like the traditional instruction. And that's our anchor for the day. But then I say, then reconnect with the practice, even if just for a brief time, many, many, many times throughout the entire day. So that's how I try to practice until it becomes like all the time. Like all the time. When you notice you're not in it, you reconnect with it. Like that. So that's kind of my advice. It's very much like traditional advice, isn't it? But it'd be easier with the meditation handout. And you can compare it to your sadhanas and your Ngundro texts and all that. Great, good question. So other questions and comments? Okay.
So I noticed kind of a difference in yesterday's meditation versus this one, at least for myself personally. The process of yesterday's felt a lot more fluid for me. Like it was a very natural, even when there were parts that were resisting, they kind of very effortlessly kind of got subsumed into the greater warmth versus I feel like the process tonight, it almost felt I don't want to say it fully like reified the other parts so much, but I definitely felt more of a dualism between these
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like resistances.
Too much instruction.
Mm.
That's the problem. So I'm supposed to lead a meditation for the whole room. But what about the fact that the different individuals in the room have different makeups? Sounds like you already were pretty naturally including whatever part of your mind came up or letting it include itself. That's what you described last night, right? Fantastic. Then my job would just be to confirm that. Great, great work. And tonight was too much instruction for you. But for someone else, it may have been new. Maybe they weren't just naturally including all parts of themselves. Some people said, oh, part of me was feeling fear. Like I'm now identified with fear. That's not including that sense of self and its feeling of fear. That's being identified with it. That's feeling like you are it. But now you cannot be a healing environment for it because you are caught up in it. That's very different. Many of us, I would say, probably most of us need the instruction. And so that's what I did tonight. But you may not have needed it. And so it just interfered with your process. Fine. So that's good to know. But back when you look at the meditation handout, you still may find it helpful. Good. Thanks for sharing that. Great. Other questions or comments? It's all welcome.
Thank you, Lama John. When you say to shift our attention from the field of care to the feelings that it evokes,
Yeah.
does that mean if we like generated a visualization in order to evoke the field of care,
In order to evoke the qualities.
in order to evoke the qualities, do we just let go of the visualization then and be with the feelings, or do we keep the image in our mind but shift the focus from the image to our feelings more?
Either way,
Okay,
it's whatever works best for you.
sure.
The field of care, in a sense, has fulfilled its basic purpose for this practice by evoking those qualities. And in fact, that's what's happened throughout our whole life. Did a little dog ever come running toward you with its tail wagging? And then what did you do? Just sort of sniff and walk away? Or did you kind of hug it? So that was evoking qualities of you. Do you remember that? Or a cat that suddenly jumps in your lap and is purring. Doesn't that evoke some qualities from within you? They're all embodying their Buddha nature. Loving, connecting, caring. So-called animals. It's been our whole life. Thousands of moments. When I was a simple memory of walking through the park near our home with our 2 children and our dog, my wife Barbara, and the children are getting utterly tangled up in the leash because the dog's racing around them. And this elderly couple was sitting on a bench nearby, just with the big smiles on their faces, kind of like Dan has a big smile on her face now, because you're inhabiting the moment I'm describing. We can borrow other people's caring moments too. That was a caring moment with them, with that elderly couple, and I don't know who they were, and we never met. That's what I mean by thousands of moments. And we have been that for others too. Both directions. So we've been evoking these qualities in each other. And the field of care is just a powerful, efficient evoker. And someone last night said, well, what about really profound fields of refuge and care like Chiganima Rinpoche or Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who are teachers of mine, teachers we share? How could just a caring moment replicate that? It's not that it replicates it, it's that it is not of a different order. Buddha nature is like really real. We all really are it. We can begin to sense it in each other. We can begin to speak to it in each other. If with the help of each other, we learn to access more and more of its qualities, maybe even begin to reunify with it a little bit more, then we can sense it in others. And now we're speaking to them, not just to this or that reaction from them, but to them below all the reactions, from someplace below all our reactions. And that, in a sense, in practice, starts with being able to be with any of our reactions as a healing environment for them, without having to be sucked into them, without having to go to inflict endless exhaustion upon them by identifying with them. They would prefer to be freed. These parts of our minds, these senses of self and their reactions, they would prefer to not have to endlessly react. They are tired. They want our help. And we can learn to give them big help with the qualities of our deeper nature. So, great questions. There was another one in back, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, this might be more general question because yesterday and today I feel like what was already described, like yesterday was so vivid and natural, just coming, and today a little bit more like I want to kind of force some kind of feeling or experience that I had yesterday.
Yeah, that's.
And I've tried that before and with other
typical.
practices,
Yeah,
like for example with Nundro.
Don't worry about that. I think that a good approach is, I mean, we're all kind of beginning this approach, or most of us are. And first of all, we need to explore a lot. I mean, since I have introduced this possibility of recalling caring moments, or someone who's been a benefactor that we consider a benefactor, in the sense of, we're truly grateful that they have existed, that they were in our world. Even as I'm speaking, I'm thinking of 3 or 4 people like that. It almost makes me tear up to think of them. Or spiritual field, all the sacrifice that really profound spiritual figures have gone through for the sake of beings. All they had to do to become freer so they could be here for us. So to really reflect during our days now, try to recall more caring moments, or one or more benefactor figures, or see if you really do relate deeply to a spiritual field of care or refuge for real, not just I was assigned it and I'm going to try my best. And see what is really connecting for you, what's really effective, what really evokes the qualities. For some reason, in my house when I was a small child, I don't know how this happened. It was following the Second World War. There was an older German woman who lived in our home. We were a Jewish family, but named Lena. And she sort of helped with things. And she just lived with us. And she loved children. So all I need to do is think of Lena. One moment with Lena. And that's it. Okay, what about tomorrow night? All I need to do is think of Lena. That's it. Every time it'll be fresh. Because we're engaging it not as just a memory that gets stale. We're re-inhabiting it. And it comes alive more and more and more as we catch on to that. So you just need to find more and possibly more effective caring moments, or benefactor figure or figures, or deep connection to spiritual field that's really yours. It has to be really yours, not just something that you do because everyone says they're doing it. It has to be yours. So that what I mean by yours is it's actually evoking these qualities we've named. You're actually beginning to experience them. And then as soon as you begin to experience them, know that these are qualities coming from the depth of your awareness. The ordinary sense of self and its reactions has been momentarily disrupted, and these qualities are coming forward. Recognize their tremendous worth. Don't ignore them. Steep in them. Let them process you. Like that. And do the meditation 100,000 times and all your problems will be solved. It's like Mundra.
Thank you, Lily John. I have a question. Of the three, this is really loud. Of the three
Options.
objects,
Options.
options, the spiritual
Field.
field works by far the best for me.
Great.
So I'm not really concerned about that.
Yeah.
But I am concerned more about, I think because in sharing these sorts of things with others or in experimenting with it with myself, in trying to think of like moments of care or what you're calling a benefactor, it seems like yes, I can definitely recognize and in my life as I'm interacting with others and such, like, okay, yes, here are qualities of love, here are qualities of responsive compassion and such. But to bring this to mind in a meditation with the first two options, when I can do it in a way that feels positive, it feels like there's an element of like oxytocin, pleasure, those sorts of things. And I'm kind of wondering, because to me, what's really being invoked here, like what we're going, this sounds like it's a lot of meditation for people who do not have experience of like trying to help connect people with unconditional acceptance and love. And so to me, that is not an experience of like, yes, it is joyful, it is enjoyable, it is deeply healing and changing. I wouldn't say it's pleasure, like it's a pleasure feeling or like all about the oxytocin. And like when you talk about like snuggling a cat or a dog, like I snuggled a lot of dogs since our talk last night, and I was really paying attention to it. And I was like, this is so wonderful and it's so joyful. But I don't think that the feelings of like that oxytocin dopamine thing is really what we should be maybe grasping for. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't think it's actually that simple when take the example of snuggling with a child or snuggling with a dog. I don't think that's reducible to just, oh, that's oxytocin. There's nothing really meaningful going on here. I think actually, could be oxytocin, it could be pleasure, it could be some ego grasping happiness. I think other things are going on too. Often deep care, a very simple and genuine wish of love. Just wanting this puppy or this dog to be deeply well. I don't think that's just oxytocin. And feeling how the dog or the cat or the child wants so much to be loved and responding to that wish by that being with love. And I think those are important.
I agree with you. And I was noticing those as well in snuggling the animals. I found that in trying to do the meditation with the first two, it was more dangerous to kind of be attached to some feelings as well, though, I guess is my point, rather than with a spiritual figure.
So how many times have you done this meditation?
Only the past.
2 days.
Although actually, I spend a lot of time reconnecting with qualities like
No, no, no,
this.
no, no, no. This meditation. Yeah. It can gradually purify the way that we're experiencing the qualities into increasing unconditionality with practice. But that's just if someone was interested enough in it to take it up and do it quite a lot. And you might find that the experience keeps developing. It's not just the same as the first time or two. Of course, there are attachments that come all over it. There are attachments all around this conversation. But that doesn't mean that the only thing going on in this conversation is attachment. So also with the qualities we're beginning to experience, they come mixed with clinging. But that can also begin to be purified away with deepening familiarity. At the same time, I offer these as different options. Not that everyone should go through all of them. Whichever option is most effective, least problematic, least triggering parts of our mind, senses of self that want to get more control over everything, fully comprehend it in their familiar ways. Which of these three options is most simple, most direct, most connecting? And you said at the start, the spiritual field is. So why talk about the other options? They're not as connecting. They're more problematic for you right now. Stick with spiritual field. Explore that. Maybe practices that I'm leading just become the way you are now doing Ngundro or Kirim or some other part of your practice. That's fine. These practices, patterns were adapted from that. It's fine. It's certainly fine with me. Other questions or comments? It's all good. Yeah, Deanne?
I think it's a comment, but it might be a question.
Make it a little louder.
I think it's a
Yeah.
comment, but it might be a question.
Yeah, it's fine.
What I'm noticing is that there is a real shift from a kind of a more conventional understanding of awakening. Usually it's understood, not usually, but conventionally, understood almost as a more cognitive kind of thing that is happening where the ignorance or the error is being seen through.
Oh, yeah.
But what you're doing, what you're bringing is actually the whole sensory field into it, emotional, heart, and aesthetic. Like you're really kind of like
All of it.
getting us to wake the whole thing up.
That's
not
called
only, right?
in the one psychology term for that is grounded cognition. So the practice is bringing online multiple neural systems simultaneously. So affective, sensory, interoceptive, also cognitive, all suddenly kicking in at once, which is also true of ritual practice in general. But sorry, please go on.
That was basically my comment. There is something really powerful in that of bringing the whole of the person, the whole of the field, to be part of the process or to be pulled in. So I thought, I think this is really, really powerful, especially with our time, I guess. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. A wonderful comment. Yeah, I wanted to bring that term grounded cognition in because it's so profound. So usually we think of enlightened wisdom as seeing through the reified constructions or projections of ignorance. Then we can tend to think of that perhaps a little too literally, as if it's actually a seeing, almost with the eyes. We would say, well, no, I didn't mean, I knew it's not with the eyes. But it can sort of start to feel like that to us, or at least it's not exactly intellectual, but something like intellectually. We've studied Madhyamaka long enough, so now I have intellectually reached the inference so that ignorance sort of falls apart. And that could happen. But the problem is, and this came through some practice with some of my own teachers who are so profoundly embodied, the ignorance is not just up here in the way we think about things. It is experienced in our bodies and our affective energies as a tendency to reify and grasp onto all of that. So unless all of that is engaged, the tendencies of ignorance, that is reifying and then fixating on, dualistically fixating on, and then clinging and grasping to physical sensations, or sensory sensations of all kinds, affective feelings and energies, that ignorance would not be addressed if we keep it in our head, as if from our head we're seeing through ignorance, which I think is what you're pointing to. And I actually have been in a process of learning that from my own teachers who are very embodied and really pointed that out to me and others, how to practice in the body. So that's really informed this practice. So thanks so much for raising that so consciously.
It just, to bounce back, my own teacher, Khenpo Tsotum Jetsu Rinpoche, used to have us sing and dance, not because of singing and dancing, but that whole thing of bringing the whole experience to into the practice. And there are different ways, but I find that your particular approach is really powerful in that way. So I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jan. That's really helpful input. You're lucky to have had Tsotum Gyatso Rinpoche as a teacher. So there would be time for one very short comment or question, or we could end here.
There is an online question.
Oh, okay, great.
It says, "Thank you so much, John. I sometimes notice a tendency in myself to think things like, I need to be alone to practice. Living with another person and being around other people is an obstacle for my practice. You mentioned the relationality of these practices, and I am wondering if you could expand on this aspect, and if you have some advice for how to deal with this tendency."
Well, just as a practical matter, thanks for the question, but just very concisely, there probably are times when we need to be alone in our practice. And that can be arranged within your own home. Like my wife, Barbara, she's also a practitioner, but we get up in the morning, we make coffee. If we don't have coffee, we're both kind of still dead. And then she goes off to her corner of some sofa in the house, and I go up to the bed, which is the most comfortable, effective place for me to meditate. And we do our practice. So we're alone, or not completely, I mean. And then we come together for breakfast. So that's just an example. And usually they can find ways to do that. Well, secondly, there are probably times when you just need to get away and practice in retreat, or practice more intensively or focused way. That could be with others because they can be so profoundly supportive of your own practice, but in a retreat environment or real focused practice environment. Thirdly, if we practice over time and if we catch on, more and more, even if gradually, what's happening is, here's one relational aspect. We have been held in care and love and wisdom. We are held in it now. And these practices that I'm sharing are just a way to begin to wake up to that. We're already held in them. And by all who have awakened before us, because that's what awakening means. If you awaken as a bodhisattva, you are now holding the world in these powers. That is what awakening means. It's not some individual attain some lofty status for people to respect her lots. To hell with that. You are now holding the world from the ground of your being, the nature of mind. That's what you are if you have profoundly awakened. You are holding the world, and that means we are now held by all of those who have awakened. That's relational. And that starts to awaken us. It starts to resonate with our deep nature. It starts to bring out its qualities. And if we get used to those, familiarize with those qualities, unify with them more and more and with their source in the ground of our experience, our nature of mind, now we're holding our family, all the people around us, the animals around us. Now we're joining the bodhisattvas in this great holding environment. And that starts to change how the family is without talking about it. Not talking about it. Just discovering that, oh, this is how it can be. This is how I meant to be. And exploring how that can be. So it's relational from the start, and it culminates in the fullest possible relationality, holding all beings. That can certainly start with your own family and your pets, and then all the others. So I guess that would be some response. Well, thanks for that. So we're right at the end. Great. Thanks for your patience.